Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, my name's Alexa Ray. And welcome to another video. I'm so glad you're here and I'm so glad you clicked on today's video. We are going to be doing another reading vlog today and I'm super excited because the whole idea of today's reading vlog revolves around the world of book talk. And I feel like a lot of you can agree when I say that book talk really got so many of us back into reading. Book talk really took off back in 2020 because everyone was at home. We were all just sitting around. A lot of us found comfort in books and reading. I can thank book talk for getting me back into the world of reading. So I thought it would be really fun for today's video to actually read viral TikTok books, and I was thinking we could read some OG book talk books. One of the books we're going to be reading is A Court of Thorns and Roses. This was one of the books I bought back in early 2021 because of book talk. I cannot even tell you guys how many times I picked this book up and I could not get into it. I just remember like the early chapters being super slow. I feel like with fantasy books, it's kind of expected. Usually the beginning of these books is setting up the world and kind of making readers feel like they're in the story. I feel like this entire series is so popular and people rave about it. I always get asked to read this on my channel, so this is one of the books we're going to be reading. Another highly requested series on my channel that is also like an OG book talk book is the Selection series. I recently read Shatter Me and I was absolutely obsessed with it, and a lot of you were like, if you like the writing style of Shatter Me, if you like the vibes, you'd love this book. So we are going to be reading book one in the Selection series today. I've heard so many people talk about this series and I have heard a fair share of mixed reviews, but nonetheless we're gonna try it out, see what happens. I feel like I'm gonna like it, but I don't know, we'll just have to see. I have The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This was a book I have seen so much on TikTok like forever, and I finally picked it up. I've heard amazing things about this series as well. I thought today's video would be a perfect time to finally pick it up. So the first book we're going to start off with is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Very popular book. I'm sure you guys have all heard of it. This is like a super hyped up fantasy book on book talk. The beginning of book talk, I feel like this book was super big, and as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the first books I picked up when I was kind of getting back into reading, and I did attempt to read this multiple times and I couldn't get into this book. It's such a slow start to it. I feel like with fantasy books that's really common because authors take a lot of time in the beginning of them to really set up the world, make it feel real to you. I've seen so many people rave about this entire series, and a lot of people have told me that if you get through like the first few chapters in the book, it takes off so fast and it just gets so good, and then if you keep going in the series it just gets better and better. I feel like I've had like some things kind of spoiled for me just because of book talk, which is kind of the downside of book talk. Anywhere on the internet you go, like things are bound to get spoiled for you, so that's a little bit disappointing, but we are going to be starting it. This is going to be our first read in today's vlog. I'm so nervous. I am really dragging this out because I don't know if I'm going to like it, but everyone else loves it. I have to give it a try. I have to push through the first few chapters and see for myself if it really is worth the hype. It tells the story of 19-year-old huntress Feyre. A fairy comes over and takes Feyre as a prisoner, basically. It seems like while she's living in this new magical world, she catches feelings for the fairy, and his name is Tamlin. This is where things kind of get spoiled for me because when I've seen like TikToks about this book, in this book series, I've always seen Feyre with a different name, not Tamlin, so I don't really know who Tamlin is or where he kind of comes into all of this, and if he is like the main love interest of the story. And it looks like there's a bigger shadow being who is trying to take over the whole realm, and I think Feyre tries to help Tamlin not let that happen and not lose his world. I think that's the big idea of this story. We are gonna hop right into it. We're one chapter in. It's exactly how I remember it because I've already read the first chapter probably a gazillion times, and I usually always stop after the first chapter because it just seems super slow, and I'm like also kind of a slow reader to begin with, so it takes me forever to get through this first chapter. It's really just like setting up the beginning of the story and explaining why Feyre gets into the position that she does. I have to say, it's not as bad as I remember it being, and now that I've gotten through the first chapter, I feel a little bit better to keep moving on. I think it's just like the first few chapters kind of getting into the story I'm really just bored with, but I think once Feyre crosses over into the new realm, the new world, I think I'll be a little bit more interested in it. It's just always these first few chapters kind of building up the story and explaining how she gets to the new realm. It's always just like really boring to me. I don't know why. It's probably because I'm not a really big fantasy reader to begin with, so I'm not really used to these types of like storylines and writing styles, so we're gonna keep going and see what happens. So it's a little bit later now, and Chris and I are about to head out to go to the gym, and a lot of you were messaging me and telling me that the audiobook is like incredible and it actually makes the story better. I'm very new to the audiobook world and I haven't listened to a lot of them. I think I'm gonna try out the audiobook for this while I'm working out today and see if I get more into the story with the audiobook. Hopefully that works, because I've found with a few books lately that when I listen to the audiobook version of it for a little bit, I'm actually more like interested in the story. So we're gonna try out the audiobook for this, see what happens. We're gonna go to the gym, get a good workout in. My cute little gym outfit of the day. This crew neck I always get questions on. It's actually from PacSun and it's really, really old. I don't even think they sell it anymore. And then underneath I'm wearing my little Harper Wilde sports top. I am obsessed with their stuff. I've talked about them previously in a few videos of mine, but they're the comfiest bras ever. I highly recommend. I actually have a discount code for you guys if you want to go check out their site. I'll have it linked down below. You can use my code AlexaRay15. Get 15% off your order. They have some really comfy and cute tops. They have some sleepwear, some loungewear. But we're gonna head out. We're gonna try out the audiobook, see what happens. I'm hoping it kind of like gets me into it a little bit more, because I feel like my main problem with this book right now is that there are just so many words in it that I don't know how to pronounce, and it's kind of driving me crazy. So I'm sure once we listen to the audiobook and I hear like someone else saying them, I'll pick up on it more and enjoy it more. So I've just hit chapter 23, page 208. We are like maybe a little bit more than halfway. I'm like so obsessed with this story right now. I have not like been this obsessed or enjoyed a story like this in such a long time. There's something so different about this one that's really getting me right now. Like the chokehold this story has on me right now. I did not see this coming. Really went into this thinking that I was not going to like it. I wasn't going to get into it like everyone else. Now we're halfway through and I am so obsessed with this story. I'm obsessed with these characters. I cannot believe how the story has gone so far. It's just not what I expected at all. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what to say because I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to give spoilers or anything, but like Tamlin's character and Feyre and even Lucien at some points, I just can't believe how much I am enjoying this story right now. I am actually in shock. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself. Like this is so crazy, but I feel like this is going to be a 5-star read for me. I'm only halfway through this book, but I'm telling you, by the end of this book, it's definitely going to be a 5-star read for me. As soon as we got home, I literally sat down and read another couple chapters because I could not wait to like see what happened next. And I'm just like, oh my god. These characters I'm literally falling head over heels for, but I'm nervous because I feel like we're getting to a point in the story where something bad's gonna happen. I don't know what I'm gonna do because I feel like everything is going so nice right now. I just wanted to update you guys, let you know that I am literally obsessed with this. I am enjoying it so much. Forget everything I said in the beginning of this video about this book, how it's so boring and I'm not gonna like it. Everything I said, let's just pretend that didn't happen. Okay, that wasn't me. Reese has entered the chat. I am so confused right now. Like, actually, I don't know what's going to happen. We finally met him and it was quite the scene. I don't know how to feel about him. Like, I don't know if he's going to be like a good guy or a bad guy.
Why is it so cold?
It's an ice roller.
Not my favorite.
I just finished this book up this morning. I read a ridiculous chunk of it yesterday and I just feel like I am never going to be the same after this book. I think it is safe to say that my expectations were blown out of the water with this book. I went into this thinking I was not going to like it at all because I have tried to read it so many times in the past and I never got into it. It was just such a slow startup for me. I have to say this time around, life-changing, life-altering. This book and these characters. I'm sure many of you could probably guess it while I was reading this book, but this is easily a 5-star read for me. I'm literally wowed. I haven't read a fantasy book in such a long time, like probably not since high school, honestly. And when I was kind of getting back into reading, I was only reading romance because romance is just my favorite genre. I haven't really branched out into the fantasy world yet because I know it's so different from reading just romance books. So I was definitely nervous to go into this. Reading this time around was so different from other times I've tried to read it, and I really think it's because I've matured so much as a reader over the past year. This entire story was so good. It was just so different. Like, I've never read anything like this before, and I have to say the writing style in this is just so captivating. Like, I was reading this book and I could not put it down. I could not recommend this enough to you guys. If you're a heavy romance reader like myself and you're scared to branch out into the fantasy world, I feel like this is such a good book to branch out into. It is a fantasy book and, you know, you are diving pretty deep into the fantasy world, but I feel like the romance in this is like the core part of the story, and that's why I loved it so much. I don't know, I'm just really excited to read book 2 and see what happens. So it's a 5-star read. It definitely deserves all the hype it gets over on BookTok. I'm actually kind of upset I didn't pick this book up sooner, which in a way I did actually pick it up pretty soon, and I was trying to hop on the train of this whole series, but I just wasn't ready. As a reader, I wasn't ready to go into this series yet, and if I forced myself to go into it, I just feel like I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I do now. Everything happens for a reason, and I'm happy I waited because I am just literally in love with this series. I definitely want to vlog me reading the rest of this series. This has been a great start to the reading vlog. The next book we're gonna read is The Selection by Kara Cass. This is such a popular book. So many of you always comment on my videos saying, you have to read the Selection series. It's my favorite series. It's such a good one. It's finally time for me to pick this book up and give it a try. This is another book that has been on my bookshelf for far too long. I think because I've seen so many people read it and review it and kind of hype it up, I've shied away from reading it because I say it all the time, but when books are super hyped up, I get really nervous to read them. What if I don't like them because they're so hyped up and now I have unrealistic expectations for them? This is one of those books that I feel like I have very high expectations for. I'm only going to be reading book 1 in today's video. You guys will have to let me know if you'd want me to read like the rest of the series and vlog it for you. We're gonna read book 1. This tells the story of America. She is basically competing in a competition with a bunch of other girls to win the prince's heart. From what my understanding is that America doesn't want to be in the competition because she's actually in love with someone else. This other man that she's in love with is below her class, so she can't actually be with him. I think they live in like a dystopian world. I'm pretty sure this is like that type of vibe. This is going to be a very interesting read. It kind of gives me like Bachelor vibes. I'm excited. We're gonna get into it. I'm on page 119, chapter 11. This is such an easy and fast-paced read. I feel like I've been flying through this. The beginning, I feel like with every book, you have to make it at least 100 pages in before you can actually judge it. The first few chapters of this book was not that it was slow or boring, it just wasn't, like, it wasn't really catching my attention. We just kind of got an insight into America's life at home, her family life. I want to say it was like the 5th or 6th chapter. We were about 50 pages in. The story, like, took such a weird turn for me. Already there was a little twist in it that I didn't see coming, and I was just like, what is actually going on right now? America is now staying at the castle. The selection is in full motion now. We also briefly meet the prince at the end of chapter 10, and I feel like he's really nice, and that kind of scares me. I don't know why. I was expecting him to be almost mean or something, or maybe like full of himself because he literally has 35 women in his castle right now for him to just date. We're gonna keep going, see what happens. I feel like there's something missing still. Like, I feel like there's going to be a bigger plot to this whole story. We're on chapter 19, page 256. I only have this little bit left. I feel like I've been speeding through this book. This is probably like the fastest I've read a book in a super long time. I'm actually really surprised. I didn't know how I was going to feel about this one, just because I do hear people say that they loved it in middle school and when they were super young. Being that I'm not in middle school or high school anymore, I didn't think I was going to like it, but I have to say it's actually been a really fun and interesting story. It's very different from the Shatter Me series, obviously, like totally different storylines, characters, stuff like that, but it is a very similar writing style. A lot has happened, and not at all how I thought the story was going to go. I don't know why. I almost thought this was going to be like an enemies to lovers, but it's actually like the complete opposite. This is almost like a strangers to friends to lovers type of trope. There's definitely like a love triangle in here, so just like a lot of things I didn't expect. Chapter 18 is probably my favorite chapter at the moment, just because it was a really sweet moment with America. I don't know how to feel right now. I almost feel like Aspen is messing things up, and it's kind of frustrating me, and I just want him to go away. I'm shook right now. I did not think I was going to like this as much as I did. It actually took off pretty quickly, and I wound up falling in love with it immediately. I have so many theories for book 2. I do think the hype around this book in this book series is 100% real, and I haven't even read the rest of the books in the series yet, but I can almost already tell that they're going to be really good. The last quarter of this book really got me. I feel like it kind of boosted it to a 4-star read for me, because I feel like I'm going to be thinking about these characters and this storyline for a little bit. Like, I feel like this is definitely going to be a book and a story in the back of my mind. So I decided to give it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. I love the storyline. I love that it's like a royalty type of story. I love reading about like princesses and princes, kings, queens, stuff like that is just really fun and intriguing to me. So I love the whole idea of it. Definitely worth the hype. 4 stars. Another great read in today's vlog. We have finally hit the final book of this reading vlog, and I saved this one for last because it is the one book that I have heard absolutely nothing about. Like, I've seen it a ton over on BookTok, and it's a book I've seen for such a long time, but I don't actually know what it's about. I don't know anything about it. I'm not really familiar with any of the characters. Pretty excited. I feel like A Court of Thorns and Roses, The Selection, they have both been such incredible books that I was nervous going into them, and I wound up loving them so much, so I have really high hopes for this one. We're gonna be starting The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. Don't really know what this is all about, so we're actually gonna read the back of it. Mare Barrow's world is divided by blood, those with red and those with silver. Mare and her family are lowly reds, destined to serve the silver elite whose supernatural abilities make them nearly gods. When Mare accidentally discovers a power of her own she didn't know she had, the Silver King is forced to hide the impossibility of her power and pretend she's a long-lost silver princess betrothed to one of his sons. Soon, Mare is drawn into the silver world, where loyalty and desire can tear you apart and the only certainty is betrayal. And before long, her actions put into motion a deadly and violent dance, pitting prince against prince and Mare against her own heart. Is this gonna be like a love triangle? There's gonna be a little romance in here, might be a little love triangle. There's a love triangle in A Court of Thorns and Roses, a love triangle in The Selection, and it seems like there's gonna be a love triangle in The Red Queen. That is so funny. me. I didn't even do that on purpose. Love triangles must be BookTok's favorite trope. So we're gonna jump right in, see what it's all about. So we've read 50 pages, we're on chapter 6. I have to say it is interesting, like there is some crazy stuff kind of starting to happen, but it's not grabbing my attention. And I feel like it's kind of starting off pretty slow. I'm not going to judge it just yet. It's a little bit later. I don't actually know the last time I picked up my camera. I am on chapter 15, page 168. I don't know why I'm not getting into this. It's just not keeping my attention. I don't know why. It's honestly just your typical dystopian world romance. There's this girl who is basically coming from nothing and now she's higher up in ranking. Mare is living in a world that is divided by reds and silvers. They are divided by the color of their blood. Her entire life she thought that she was a red, and now we are finding out that her blood is a different color. It's not silver or red. So we're kind of watching that all happen, and she's discovering new powers that she never knew she had, and everyone around her is kind of like, what is this girl? Like, where is she coming from? Because they have never seen anything like her before. So we are kind of watching all of that unravel. We have been introduced to the two princes, but the first one we were introduced to was Cal, and I feel like I'm vibing more with Cal right now. He just seems like a sweetheart. At this point in a book, something usually happens, but like nothing's happening. Hopefully it gets better and gets more interesting. I don't know why I'm just not vibing with this. I don't know. I really didn't like this book, guys. I'm not even gonna lie. We were almost 200 pages in and I was not vibing with this book. I did not like it. I was not connecting with the characters. It just seemed really boring and bland to me. I kept going and I'm now on chapter 23, page 288. We're almost done with it. And I have to say it has actually picked up a ton since the last time we talked. There's this one scene with Mare and Cal that just totally got me, and I was suddenly like reeled into the book and the story, and I could not put it down. After that one scene, I was like, okay, now I have to see what the heck happens. And I feel like you can tell that I'm like a heavy romance reader, because whenever a book starts romancing like the littlest bit, I get so sucked in and I just have to keep going to see what happens between the characters. I have no idea where this is going to go, and I only have like this little chunk left. I don't know what's gonna happen in it because I feel like we're kind of building up to a bigger plot twist right now. Kind of nervous because I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm trying to be optimistic and not judge it too much, but that's all I'm doing. So we got to chapter 26, and I don't know if I did a recap on that. Everyone talks about that chapter and says how crazy it is and like the plot twist in it, and it was quite crazy. It caught me a little off guard. I don't know. I just wasn't wowed by this story or this storyline. I think it's because I've been reading so many stories like this lately, and I just loved the other ones I've read previously to this. This one just wasn't anything new or mind-blowing to me. I think this is going to be a 2-star read for me. I feel like I will not remember this storyline or these characters as much. Nonetheless, it was an okay read. I don't want to say it's not worth the hype because I know so many people enjoyed this book. If you have a similar reading style to myself, I don't think it's really worth the hype. Like, I definitely prefer Shatter Me over that book or The Selection over that book. But that brings us to the end of our reading vlog. So happy for us, so proud of us. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope you had fun and I hope you enjoyed it. I have to say I was pretty blown away by the first 2 books we read. I did not think I was gonna like them that much, and I wound up absolutely adoring them. Like, those stories are engraved in my mind still, and I cannot wait to move on throughout the series and see what happens. And I'm just like, if you got this far in the video, let me know what your favorite book is that you got off of BookTok. Mine is definitely A Court of Thorns and Roses. Literally wowed away by that book, and I cannot wait to move on in the series. I'm just so excited about that. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful rest of your night, and I'll see you in my next video.